In this video, we're going to make the click track play in time with you in Cakewalk by Bandlab. Hi folks, I'm Mike and I do hope you're well. Now you hear lots of people saying these days that modern music lacks the human touch. They particularly point to the fact that vocalists use pitch correction and that we all play along with a click track which stays the same throughout the song, sounding a little bit robotic. In previous times, bands would play and they would naturally change their tempo throughout the song, giving it a little bit more feel. Now you may be thinking that with a modern DAW you're locked into setting up a click track and playing along with it. But I'm here to tell you today that you're wrong. There is a way to make your DAW play along with you. I'm going to be showing you this in Cakewalk by Bandlab, and I'm going to be using a feature called AudioSnap. Now normally with AudioSnap what we do is take some audio and stretch it to fit the existing tempo so that it continues to play at that regular rhythm. But we're going to be using it in an unusual way today and make the click track play along with us, so it speeds up and slows down with us. Now there's a couple of different uses for this. First of all, you may think from the outset that this is what the song needs, so you start recording with this process in mind. And secondly, you may have recorded a band live and then you may want to put it into your DAW, add some enhancements, and you may want it to fit the grid to do that. So that's why you may go ahead and record your song in this way. I'm going to show you exactly how to do it, but before we do get stuck into that, if you like this kind of content, all about home recording, DAWs, gear reviews, plugin reviews, that kind of thing, then please do subscribe and ring the bell on YouTube so that you get notified about my future videos. Now let's get stuck into some audio snapping. So I thought I'd start off at the end by showing you guys the finished result of this tutorial so you can kind of see where we're heading. What we've got here is a little demo piece of music which I put together yesterday. It lasts around about a minute or so and it's very simple. It's really just a rhythm section. It comprises of an acoustic guitar which I just recorded with one mic, and I've hardly processed that at all. A little bit of EQ and some saturation, and also some drums and bass guitar. Now the drums and bass guitar are both virtual instruments, so as such what I've recorded for those is MIDI data, and that becomes a little important later on. Now as I play this piece of music through, I want you to pay particular attention to the tempo, and that's shown at the top here. In fact, I'll zoom in so you can see it a little bit closer, and what we're looking at here is the start value of 84.64. I want you to see how that changes as we play the piece of music. Now 1 minute is quite a long time to listen to just a rhythm section and not much else going on, but I implore you to listen all the way through and take a look at these tempo changes. Let's do that now. So as you can see there, it's slowed down right at the end for that outro. So we started off with a kind of a steady tempo, it sped up in the middle, and then it slowed down right at the end. And in fact, if we take a look at the tempo map here in Cakewalk, you can see that happening there. So we started off at the beginning there, like with a fairly steady kind of a tempo, and you can see it lifted for that middle section, which represents a kind of a bridge or a chorus, and then dropped off there for a kind of an outro section. Now, those tempo changes changes range from around about 82 BPM all the way up to 87. It's fairly significant in terms of tempo change, but hopefully you'll agree it actually sounded rather natural. There was nothing there which really sort of jumped out, oh, it suddenly got faster or suddenly got slower. It just felt right for the particular progression as it was moving through the song. Now, what's interesting is if we look at the drums, for example, and we look at the piano roll of the drums, you can see that each beat of the drums is actually perfectly on the grid there. These drums are actually quantized, but of course, because the tempo map in Cakewalk is actually changing, the drums are remaining in time with the guitar. So this was recorded in quite a different way. Normally what we would do is set a click track and then we play our guitar in time with that click track. We did it the reverse way this time. I actually recorded the guitar part first and I played it with no click track whatsoever, and then I made Cakewalk follow the tempo of that guitar so that the click is actually following the guitar. And what that means is with other virtual instruments is apart from being able to quantize them, we can actually copy and paste sections of those virtual instruments from one section of the song to the other, and they will remain in time with the guitar. So hopefully what we're getting here is a very natural sounding tempo. Not all songs need this, but some definitely do need it. So how did I go about doing that? Well, I used a feature to assist me in this in Cakewalk, and it's called AudioSnap. But before I really get to using that, I need to do a little preparation, and that's what we're going to do now. So preparation is absolutely key for this process. If you don't prepare correctly, then it's very likely that you'll come unstuck later. Added to that, if this is not the kind of thing that you're going to be doing very often, then you'll likely forget some of these steps. So I highly encourage you to bookmark this video, or better still, actually add it to a playlist on YouTube so that you can easily find it later and refer to it when you're using these techniques with your own piece of music. So we're starting off with this acoustic guitar here, and as I say, I recorded it without any click track whatsoever, so it's just a free form tempo to this guitar track and hopefully sounding nice and natural for the song. So let's start off by just expanding it a little bit. In fact, I'm just going to zoom into the top part of Cakewalk here because that's where we'll mostly be working. So I'm going to zoom in so that we can clearly see the waveform. I'm just going to click on Control right arrow on my keyboard to go into the beginning there. Now the first thing that I'm looking for is the first transient which lands on the first beat of the first bar. What does all of that mean? Let's start off with transients. So if you look at this waveform here, you can see these spikes here. These are the kind of loudest parts, and in this case with the acoustic guitar, it's where that plectrum first sort of hits that top string and then goes down. That is the part that we want to be landing on an actual beat. Now, in some pieces of music, there will, of course, be some strums or some music just before the first beat. That's quite common. So we do want to make sure we look out for the transient which is on the actual first beat, nothing which is before that. Now, in my case, that happens to be the very first strum, so it's nice and easy for me. So I'm going to start off by turning the snap off, and I'm going to drag the edge of this waveform over so I'm cropping it to that first transient on the first beat. With that done, I'm then going to turn the snap back on, and I'm going to drag this across so that it lines up with the beginning of a bar. In this case, I'm just going to drag it so that it lines up and snaps to the beginning of the second bar. Don't drag it to the first one because remember, there is a little bit of audio before this which we need to use, so we don't want to be putting it right at the beginning. I would say either the second or even the third bar is good practice. That's what I normally do. So now that we have the beginning of our piece of music lining up with the beginning of a bar, I'm actually going to duplicate this track. And that's because I'm going to be doing some sort of destructive things to it. So I want to make sure that I do keep my original guitar intact. So I'm just going to right click in this area and click on Duplicate Track. And then this little pop-up appears, and you just want to make sure that you check events in there, that events checkbox, to make sure that you actually duplicate the audio data as well. So I'll click on OK. So now we have two tracks. In fact, you can only see one of them, so I'll just zoom back out. There's our two tracks. Now, I'm using one of these as a spare to work on it, and I'll keep the original. So the bottom one here is going to be the original. I can just drag that edge back out again so that we've got all of that audio just before the beginning there. I'm going to mute it, and then I'm just going to squash it down, and I won't be using it for the rest of this tutorial. This is something that I'll introduce once I've sorted out this whole tempo map. So going back to the piece that we're actually going to be working on, where we're actually going to be setting the tempo to, and the next thing I want to do is get the tempo roughly fitting in with this track. If we play it at the moment, it's on the default tempo of 120 BPM, which Cakewalk starts off with. I'll turn the metronome on and I'll play the track. And you can hear that it's miles out. So the easiest way to do this is probably to play around with some values, but to give you an idea of what I'm looking for, this transient here, the one that I'm circling here with my cursor, is actually falling on the first beat of the second bar. So I want to try and make that line up with this bar here right at the top, where it says number 3. Let's zoom back in again so we can see what we're doing. So this transient here is actually where the first beat of the second bar is, but it's all the way back here on the metronome. So I happen to know that if I type in a value of around about 85 or 86, I'll do 85, that's going to make those two things line up. So you can see now here that this transient is now lining up with the beginning of that third bar. Of course, for your song, the tempo is going to be different, so you'll have to play around with the correct value to get that. So now, if I play from the beginning, you'll hear that it roughly lines up. Still okay at the moment. Oh, but it's starting to drift now, right? That's what we're aiming to fix. We want to make sure that that click stays in time with the audio. So the next thing I want to do is turn that snap off again, and I just want to reveal just a little bit of that audio at the beginning. So you can see there's mostly nothing there, and there's just a little bit before that first transient. So I've just uncrop that there a little, get it as close as you can. And then I'm actually going to do a permanent clip to this audio so that any audio existed at the beginning there is now completely gone. We won't be able to recover it. So I'm just going to right click on the waveform here, and I'm going to do apply trimming. So that now has got rid of all the audio there. If I just drag this out, you'll see it's actually nothing. There's just a grey line there. That's important because if that audio exists there, even though we can't see it, it does confuse Cakewalk a little bit in this process. So do make sure you do that part. So the next thing I'm going to do is actually change this drop down up here from clips. I'm going to change it to audio transients, and that reveals the transients which Cakewalk has detected with its kind of beat detection for the AudioSnap feature, which we'll get onto in a moment. Now that all may sound like gobbledygook to you. I'll assure you it will become much clearer later. So these transients are all enabled at the moment. And the reason I know that is because they're big, long, light yellow lines. I actually want to disable them all. They're going to be very useful later, but not useful to me at the moment. So I'm going to zoom back out so I can see my whole track. And then starting over from the right-hand side, I'm just going to drag a box over all of those transients to highlight them. And then I'm going to click Control, Alt, and D on my keyboard to disable them. That keyboard combination is a toggle, so if they're enabled, it will disable them. If they're disabled, it will enable them. I've disabled them, so they're not having any effect at the moment, but they are going to be very, very useful later, so I'm not actually deleting them. So I'll zoom back in, and the next thing I'm going to do is open up my AudioSnap palette, and I do that by clicking Alt and A on the keyboard. And this is going to be the tool we'll mostly be using through this process to get our click track in time with our audio. So that's all the preparation done. Okay, so I'm all prepared and ready to go. And I just wanted to show you guys, I am zoomed into the top of my screen here. I'm just going to zoom out for a moment so that you can see that actually at the bottom, I've got my tempo map open. So it's handy if you do have that open. We don't need it for just the moment, but it will be a little bit handy later on so you can see the changes which are happening. So I'll zoom back in there so that we can see the main tools that we'll be using. So the first thing I want to do is actually make sure that this clip here is clicked on, and then in the AudioSnap palette, I'm going to click on the Edit Clip Map button. And you'll see that a few more numbers appear there at the top. So if we just zoom right in there, the ones that we need to focus on are these ones here, which have the little triangles below them. Some of them have a solid black triangle. And those are the ones which are the first beat of the bar, and some of them have a solid red triangle. We'll get onto that in just a moment, but we'll zoom back out. So those are the things that you need to take note of. And we're going to start off by selecting the first of those little transient lines that we disabled earlier. So I'm going to select it down there. You can just about see it there. And I'm going to click on Control-Alt-D on my keyboard so that that transient line is enabled. Now, it's very, very likely, as is the case for me, that that first beat of that first bar in the clip there is already lined up with that transient. And as such, it's got a red color to it. I'll just zoom in again so you can see that's got a red color to it. If it doesn't, if it happens to be black, then just drag it away a little bit and then put it back on there and it'll snap to it and it should then turn red. So that one is already sort of lined up with that first transient. Now I'm going to move on to the second bar, which is just here, and you can see here for me, if I zoom in again, that that second bar has the first beat there, which is black, which means it isn't synced up yet. So we're going to grab that transient and we're going to click Control-Alt-D again so that it's enabled, and we're just going to move that around a little bit. Not much, just a little wiggle, and when we release it will turn red, and that means it's snapped on to that yellow bar. So moving on again, I'll keep doing the same thing, and let's enable the transient here. Control-Alt-D, sorry, Control-Alt-D, not Control-Alt-Delete. And then again, I'm just going to wiggle that little line there, or that little triangle there, so that it lines up and it snaps to that transient. And at the moment you can see that they're quite close already. So I'll enable this one, wiggle it again. You can see it's already on the spot, which means at that point in the song it's probably already in line with it. I'm moving on here. Now as it gets further along, it will start to get a little bit further out. We'll do this one here again, just a little wiggle and to put it in line. But while it's still in line somewhat, what I like to do is try to kind of commit the changes that I've made. And so what I'm going to do for that is go down to my AudioSnap palette, and I'm going to click here where it says Set Project from Clip. This means it's going to set the project tempo to those changes that we've indicated in the clip. And I like to do this from time to time while those lines are still roughly in line. So I'll click on that. Now for you on the screen, not much has happened, but if we zoom out, try again. We'll zoom out to here. If we zoom out, you can see there's a whole bunch of new values which have appeared in the tempo map there. And that means it started to make changes to the tempo map. And that's why I like to have that open, just so that I can confirm to myself that that's happening when I actually click on that button. So what I'm going to do now is continue going through this with each of these. So again, just enabling that, wiggle it around till it snaps. You can see how quickly you can start to work once you get the hang of it. Enabling, so I've got off the screen for you guys. Enable it, line it up. And then once in a while, you'll get a situation like this one here. You can see there's two close together there. There's just two little lines. You just have to experiment a little bit. I think it's this one, which is the one which happens on the transient. And you can see now, if we zoom in a little bit closer, that this is just a little bit out of line now. So now we're getting to the point where it would have started to come out of sync. And then as we move further along here, again, I'll just move it further over so you can see what I'm doing. I'll enable this one here, and then this one is just going like that. Now, what I like to do, as I say, is go down and then click on that button, which is this one here, which is Set Project from Clip. And then what I also like to do is just go a few back, go to this one, say here, and then I actually just check it just by playing it and make sure that click is in time with the guitar. Let's have a listen. Okay, so that one which was back there, just here, this 10-1, just moving across a little bit so you can see it. That's over here. 10-1, when I listened to it, it was just slightly out. So what you can do is just drag that around a little bit like that, and then again, click on the button which is Set Project Clip, and then hopefully that will sound in time. I'll have a listen again. Maybe slightly out, probably close enough. And so you can continue to go through like that. And that's what I'm gonna do now. And I'm gonna speed up the video if I find anything significant which I wanna show you guys. Now I'm right near the end of the song now, and it starts to slow down considerably. So we get a massive tempo change. And this is where you can sometimes come unstuck. And I've learned the hard way with this, which reminds me to remind you, do save often, because I have experienced crashes with this. Now you'll see here that I'm almost at the end of my song. It's working towards the last bar here. I'll just play it. But Cakewalk's got a little bit confused here about where the bars probably land. Now, I actually want this one over here, which is the beginning of the next bar, to be right back here at this transient. But if I do that, I'm going to have to drag it over these in-between beats. And I can tell you from experience that Cakewalk is usually going to crash if I do that. Sometimes you can start off by shuffling these over, lining them up with their individual beats, and this will all move up. But in this case, I've actually tried it off screen and it did make it crash. So yeah, it's not a perfect scenario. What I've actually done in this position, what I'll actually do in this position is go to that last bar there, which is at 24. I'll just make sure I've set the project from the clip. So this is the 24th bar here, and I will, zooming out, go down to, or go up to, I should say, project, insert tempo change, and I'll manually insert a new tempo there to make it fit. It's not an ideal fix, but it's just a little workaround. I find this especially at the end of songs when things really slow down. It hasn't got much audio to look at to get itself in time. So just a slight imperfection with the system there, and I do generally end up with crashes. Now, it also reminds me of another thing which I haven't told you guys, and that is if we sort of scroll back over here and zoom in. So I'll just move back here. You will find sometimes that you will get beats within the space of a bar which have gone a little bit out. So again, I'll just zoom even further here. So I've actually lined up the beginning of each bar because that's kind of enough resolution for me, so to speak. Different songs, different tempos, sometimes you need a bit more. So let's say, for example, this transient here, which I think falls on the 4th beat of the bar. Let's have a listen. Okay, it's just perhaps a little bit out. So what you can actually do is you can line up the 2nd, 3rd and 4th beats as well. If you want a little bit more resolution, make it much more accurate. So I'll just enable that 4th beat there, and then on this occasion, I'll just zoom in so you guys can see what I'm doing. On this occasion, I'll grab that 4th beat, which is a hollow triangle and line that, and that's now turned red. And again, I go down to my palette and do set project from clip, and it will go ahead, and that's all going to be in line. So let's have a listen. Okay, so do remember that, because maybe in your pieces of music it will go a little bit out of time within the bar. So this is a really great way to make sure the tempo's always in time with your actual track. So zooming back out, we'll go to here, and you can see all of the tempo changes which have been applied here. Now, the tempo map down here probably doesn't look as dramatic as in the first part of this video, and that's simply because I didn't zoom in so much on this occasion. So that's how you go about using AudioSnap to put your click track in time with the actual instrument that you've already recorded. Now I can switch all of that off, and I can actually now that I've got that tempo set up, let's imagine I haven't actually checked it all, I can then go ahead and delete that duplicate track I made. I'll just get rid of the tempo map there. And now I can go ahead and add my virtual instruments, and I can quantize them, etc., and they will stay in time with my guitar. Now granted, this all looks a little bit fiddly, but I can promise you, you will get quicker at it the more you do it, and you can really work through a whole song in just a few minutes when you get used to this process. And the results are really worth it if you really want that flowing tempo change throughout the song. Now, if you've got any questions at all, please do ask in the comments down below, or go and ask at the Creative Source forums. I'll put a link to that in the description down below. If you like this video, you can really help me out by hitting the like button. That lets YouTube know that other people should watch this video. If you didn't like this video at all, then please do make sure you hit the dislike button twice. If you like this kind of content, then make sure you subscribe and ring the bell on YouTube so that you are notified about my future videos. And I will see you in the next video.